name is what? My name is my name is it's named Sadie. Hi. My name is my name is.
See, any excuse to play some Eminem here on Manx Radio. And this is because, as you may well have heard on Manx Radio News this morning, the Civil Registry has released its statistics from births, deaths and marriages on the island last year. And it's names we're looking at now because it's been revealed that Oliver and Olivia were the most popular names for Manx newborns in 2017. And Howard, I suppose both classic names, first and foremost, no great surprise to see them there in the list.
No, I suppose not. And it's we were all chatting beforehand, and it's always interesting how names come and go. And then you get other names like your James. I mean, James never goes that far, do you? My dad was a James, goes way back before then. It never seems to be far outside of the top 10. Edward, again, really popular name and has been for centuries as far as I know. It goes way back, doesn't it? An absolutely classic name. Jacob, again, I think a few years ago there was a sudden boost, it seemed to me, in biblical names, and that Seth became quite popular again, which had been out of favour for quite some time. And it's what drives these trends, I suppose, is the interesting thing, as we were mentioning before, whether it is sort of social pressures or something that's in vogue. I think it's often to do with the media again and things like films and pop stars and royalty, of course. Again, as soon as there's a royal baby born with whatever the name is, George or something, you always find a spike in that name.
I think George was there a few years ago, but interestingly, you mentioned the royals there. Looking at the list, there's no, well, Elizabeth is in there at number 7 for the girls, but apart from that, there's no immediate sort of royal names that jump out. You'd think maybe William. Harry, I think, was around for a long time in the top 10, but no Georges, no Charlottes. I suppose when the new royal baby is born, it'll be interesting to see what that's christened and whether that's in the list maybe next year.
Well, yeah, that'd be nice. And I think particularly with the girls' names, you find I'm waiting for some of the names which you think about, things like Annabelle and Emily, which are lovely names, which really dropped out of fashion for a long time. They've come back in again. Ruby, which was one of my grandmothers, was a Ruby. That really went through a low period. Beautiful name, I think. It's come right back into fashion again, although it doesn't make the top 10. But then you still have names that you just don't associate with young girls at the moment. So when was the last time you saw a baby Gladys? You don't see them on a baby Edna, my mother's name. Edna, hugely popular name for women in the early part of the 20th century. And since then has been on a steady decline. And I think in the last few years, it's virtually hit 0. I looked a few years ago and I think there were like 8 Ednas born in all of Britain. It's just fallen right out. All we need is for the latest royals to bring in a little baby Edna and it'll be right back into fashion.
It would be interesting to see. We were saying as well, you don't get any baby Jeffs now, do you? Those sort of names, Jeff, Rogers, Martins,
Norman, you see. Norman again never seems that it's you just don't associate Norman with a baby, do you, somehow, or a baby Norman?
Joanne, you've got 2 boys, I think it is. So how did you come to choose their names? What factors came into play?
Well, with my youngest son, he's Benjamin, and when I was a small child, I always wanted a boy called Benjamin. So way before he was even conceived or around, his name was decided.
Was it just a name that you liked?
I just loved it.
Yeah,
I've always loved that name. So did he grow into his name? Well, that's the question that other people can answer.
That's it, isn't it? And what's your other son?
And my other son is called Ammon, and that's like an Egyptian name that my husband really, really liked. Again, very, very unusual. Everybody accepts his name now, but again, decided before he was born. So same thing. Has he grown into that name? Who knows?
That's it, isn't it? And Georgie, coming to you, not humans, but you seem to have a whole menagerie of animals. We were talking about your dog races. You've got sort of lots of pets and animals about you. So when it comes to choosing names for pets, how do you go about that? Is it something, again, that's in your head, or do you have to see perhaps the dog or the cat or whatever and think, oh, yes, that cat looks like a Bobby or whatever? How does it work in that respect?
I think with animals, you can have a bit more time and that you can live with them for a little bit, interact with them. I had a preconceived name for my cat, and I completely changed it when I actually got to know him, and he was quite a feisty cat, and he's called Leo because that's the name that he suits.
And Leo
So-
is in the list of the
Yes.
top 10 boys' names on the Isle of Man from last year.
believe so.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
nice naming, isn't it? I think it's a name you don't seem to. I don't know that many Leos, but it's a lovely name, I must admit.
Yeah, I know a few sort of older Leos, but not many young ones. So, yeah.
And I'm the same, I think, and I've always kept cats, and I'm down to one sadly at the moment. But you're right. Sometimes you think of a name and have a preconceived name for it, and then you think, you know what, doesn't fit that name,
No.
and you have to change it. So, which is very curious, but you don't necessarily. It's that interesting one again, isn't it? When you're given a name by your parents, I know a few cases people do change their names because when they grow up themselves, they think themselves, I don't fit this name, I don't like it. Personally, I've when I was younger, I wasn't too sure about Howard, which is all somewhere on the periphery. It never drops totally out of fashion, but never becomes very fashionable. As I've got older, I really think I'm really happy to have been named that name, and it's sort of I feel I suit it.
Yes, it's quite
I've never
sort of
wanted to change it.
Slightly dashing, I would say. Howard.
He's a flatterer.
There we are. You see, we've got to keep hold of this programme now. This is a bit of flattery will do the trick, definitely.